Hi there, it's Sharon, and welcome to my studio. Today, I am thrilled to be playing with one of the newest Distress products. It's not a new product, but a new size, the Distress Oxide Minis. And you can see I've already put mine into the mini storage tins. And what I thought I'd do today is just show you the new colors that are available in minis for right now, and then also swatch them along with you. Another surprise that we have for today is these new mini distress blending brushes. So I'll do a few techniques after we're done looking at the swatches and just show you what I've been playing around with, but we'll also do a technique using these new brushes. And I love this mini size. It's great for control and just getting that small detail in there. So first we'll go ahead and we'll just swatch these kind of set by set. If you haven't played with Distress Oxides before, one thing to keep in mind is that these are a combination of pigment and dye ink. And the cool thing about them is when they react with water, you'll see that they start to have this chalky finish, this like oxidation property, which we'll go ahead and do today. So what I'm going to do is just swatch these. I do have my Distress sprayer. I am using just little pieces of Distress watercolor cardstock for swatching, and that's what I usually use Distress Oxides with, so I like to use the same paper I use the product with for swatching. And I'm just going to take these out and swatch them set by set so you can see what the colors look like for each set, and then we'll compare all the sets together so you can see what you're interested in. This is picked raspberry on top. Then we're going to go in with spun sugar, and I'm just kind of squeezing it down a little bit so you can see how the ink color looks. Festive berries. And then finally, one of my favorite reds, lumberjack plaid. And you can see how they look. This is just swatched out. That's how the colors look. But I'm going to go ahead and just add, and you'll see how that starts moving, just some water. And we'll set that aside to dry while we're working on the other ones, so you can get an idea of how that looks when you use them with water. The next set we'll do is the second set. This one is Crackling Campfire. Then we have Spice Marmalade, Rusty Hinge, and then Mustard Seed. So the next set are these greens. There's Bundled Sage, Peeled Paint, another one of my favorites, Crushed Olive, and then Cracked Pistachio. So you really have a great variety of greens in this set. So next we have Peacock Feathers, Salty Ocean, Stormy Sky, and Weathered Wood. And this set is kind of the dark blue, so we have Prize Ribbon here, and then the rest are the purples, so Seedless Preserves, Villainous Potion, and Shaded Lilac. And then finally, we have the neutrals, so Antique Linen, Vintage Photo, Walnut Stain, and then finally Black Soot. So now that my swatches are dry, you can kind of see the full range that these new mini size Distress Oxides come in. So if you don't have any of them yet, this would be a great place to start. And you can see as I put the water on them, where it's dried over here, the finish is much more chalky than when I first stamped it. And you can leave it how I had first swiped it if you like that look. I do like doing that for sentiments because they're easy to stamp and I don't put water on them. But for the most part, when I'm playing with oxides, I do use water because I want that kind of chalky effect. So those are the swatches. I have a few just distress watercolor cardstock panels. These are A2 size, and I thought it would be fun just to have a little play with some of these new colors, see how they work together, and kind of talk about some things that you can do just with the cubes rather than taking out, you know, the big full-size ink pads. And I do have all the full-size ones as well. But I've done this before with actual stamps, but I thought it would be fun to just play around and try out maybe with just using the Distress Oxide pads. So just doing a little swipe. And I've made a lot of cards like this, but just kind of with brushstroke stamps, but it would be fun just to do a little swipe with the ink pad itself. Since I swiped the first one then that direction, I'm going to go back this way just to give it a little more interest. And then of course I'll finish up with this one and also go back this way. So my things are going this direction, this direction, this direction, and I have a little movement in my card. And this is a card style that I've made many times before. And you can just leave it like that because the pigment gives you those nice kind of fun brush strokes. I am going to give it just a slight mist of water and dry it with my heat tool. And once this is dry, it's totally easy to turn into a card. Now you can do this on a card front. I've done it on a panel, which I'll glue to a card. But for these kind of brushstrokes cards, which I've made tons of times before, I just like to add one simple element to the card and then a simple sentiment. So we'll go ahead and do that. So for the focal point on this, I'm going to use these flutter dies and this butterfly flutter stamp set. This is the Stampers Anonymous set, and these are the coordinating dies from Simon Says Stamp. I have a little scrap of watercolor cardstock here, so I'm just going to and I have a little scrap of watercolor cardstock here, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to go ahead and line the die up and then just cut this out. So I have everything out. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of finish this card panel so it's ready to adhere to a card. So I have a sentiment out already. I'm going to just use this Be Fearless right here. I think that'll work. And then when I'm done, I'll adhere the butterfly. I might even put it right into the, right on top of the oxide. And then I'm just going to add some foam dots to the back of this butterfly. And I'm using the thick, these black foam dots from Simon Says Stamp. That just makes a fun and simple card panel. And you can trim it down if you like, place it on a card. I'm going to go ahead and do that while I have it out. Just going to give it like 1/8 of an inch trim on each side. Just line up my card. And you can even add some like black splatter to that, which I think to finish it, I think that's something I might need to do today. So I'm going to just put a little dot of distress paint. This is the black soot paint, and I always keep that on my desk for creating black splatter. Just take one of my brushes. This is a little bit thinner one. I don't really want to get it on the butterfly, so I'm going to just use my hands. You can cover it up with a mask if you like. But that's what the finished card looks like. And I'm going to just dry that off to make sure everything is nice and dry. But now we have something that is all set to give, and all we did really was do 3 swipes of ink, put a die cut butterfly and a sentiment, and the card is all ready to go. For the next card, I thought it would be fun just to take the oxides and create sort of like a colorful panel with the squares that we could use for the background. And I'm not making anything perfect. I'm just going to kind of pick up the colors that I like. And I am going to pay attention to what colors like I'm putting next to each other, because they will blend together. What I'm going to do is fill this whole panel up with color. add some ink spray to it, and we'll just use it for a fun background. I actually think this looks fun, kind of like this, exactly how it is. Let's just add one more color. I think maybe something darker. There's no purple on here yet, so let's just add a little seedless preserves. And you can see I got a little smudge here, which I must have some inky fingers. So I'm going to try to wipe. It's pretty wet still. So I wiped it off with a baby wipe. And I also got a little smudge up here. So we'll do the same thing. Looks okay now. But those colors are kind of just already like starting to meld together. I'm going to give this a mist with my sprayer. So not spraying a ton of water on it. It is going to move a little. And like I said, when it's still wet, I feel like I can kind of just work with it and keep it in the square. Make sure if you're doing this that you turn the baby wipe around and just use a little bit of a clean part of your baby wipe each time. That's how I got this technique. And I'm going to heat it with a heat tool. Oops. I'm going to heat it with a heat tool and see if I can't keep all this rest of this from running. So you could fill up a whole background, which would be fun. I think as I was doing this, I like the look of this square, and that's a great focal point to make another card. Again, I'll just trim it this time before to 3 3/4. Just have a bigger border this time. Cut this top, mostly the top part off. 3 3/4 by 5. So just make sure your panel is totally dry before you do this. I think part of mine was still a little wet. And for this one, I'm going to kind of do the same thing. Let me get some of my inks out of the way here. I have a butterfly that I've already cut, so we'll go ahead and add that one to our card. And then I'm going to put my sentiment right down here. I think I need another magnet. And then I'll do the same thing, just attach my butterfly with some foam dots. And you can color these in. I'd like to leave it black and white. I like the contrast on it. But you're more than welcome to stamp them in a color or color them in. That would be fun as well. And for this one, since we have this really beautiful background, I'm not going to add any splatter or anything else. I'm just going to kind of put this right in the middle and leave it as it is. And I'll go ahead. I think I'm going to add foam tape to the back of this one and add it to a card base. And so there we have a second card just with putting the cubes of ink and spraying them to give kind of like a mixed media effect. And you could add some sparkle, you could add some gems, but I'm going to leave this one just as it is. So I wanted to go ahead and play with these small brushes. If you haven't used these before, they do come in a bigger size, which I've used before, but these are a really small size. I think it's going to be great for adding some detail here. And then also, you know, when you go to close them, you're going to pull up on this ring here, so all the bristles stay inside. It's kind of like a makeup brush if you use a makeup brush like this, and just put the cap on and close it. So that really keeps everything in place. I'll show you what I did on my bigger brushes. I have them just in these tins as well. So these are also the mini Distress ink tins. I just took this plastic insert out that you see here. These I had colored with a Sharpie to indicate what color, and I did have some brushes for oxides, and these ones are for the oxides, you can see, and then I had some for inks, and I've just put different colors of washi tape on them. So that's something that you can do if you're organizing. So let's take one of these small brushes and just try it out with the stenciling. So I'm going to go in here just with some picked raspberry, just tapping my brush onto the top of the ink, not too hard. And then I'm going over just with little circles. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill all of these in. And just be careful too not to go off the bottom. I'm going to show you how to turn this into a card. So if you want to follow along, just watch the bottom. Don't get the ink there. I didn't tape it off. So that's that. I usually just keep these brushes for one color family, so I don't really need to wipe it off too much. I'm going to go ahead and just go in with this lumberjack plaid You know, I have this scrap here too if you just want to test it out to make sure it's not coming out too much. I'm going to go in just like on the right side of these. So I'm going to give some shading just to the right side, and I'll kind of do that consistently across the hearts. Going in off the corners, or off the outside, not really the corners, off the outside here. And I do like to work in this little circular motion. I just find it blends everything a little bit more smoothly for me. And you can see the shading here. I'll go ahead and just lift these up, but it has a really nice blend. You have like the two tones on the hearts. You can spray it with water if you want to do that. And let's go ahead and just do it since we are using oxides. I feel like that's kind of the point of using this kind of ink versus like a distress ink. We're getting the chalky finish. I am going to just blot it a little bit. And you see the ink starts to react and it is getting a little chalky. So I will go ahead and just dry it so it doesn't start spreading any more than it is. And I'll move my stencil out of the way to clean it. And like I said, you could have just left it how it was. I always like a little bit of a mixed media look on my card. One other thing that might be fun to do too is just to see if I can put the stencil back over where it was. And I should have done this before, but I didn't think about it. Just kind of put the stencil, you know, as close as you can over where it was before. I'm going to cover the bottom of my panel just with a piece of scrap paper. Here's a scrap that I had on my desk. And I'm going to trim the edges of this to make it a little smaller. But what I thought would be fun is just kind of go over the oxides with a spray of Distress Spritz. So the spritz is really light. I'm using Kitsch Flamingo, but we have all this nice color down already. And just give it a tiny little spray. Move this out of the way. Carefully remove my stencil. I've got something there. I'm not sure what that is. And there's a little overspray on the top, but like I said, I'm going to cut mine off. If you're not planning to cut yours, you can go ahead and just mask everything off when you're spraying. But now I have some shiny kind of mixed media hearts. I think they're really fun. Give them a good dry. And then I'm going to trim this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim it down. See how small I can get it. So it's about 4 inches now. Let's see if I can trim it down to like a 4x4 card, maybe even a little smaller. I'm actually going to trim it down as close to 3 1/4 by 3 1/4 as I can get it. So I think that looks good. I think I'm going to do a cutout sentiment on this. So I'm going to use a strip of scrap paper. And then I'm going to pull from the same sentiment set. This is the sentiment set that I'm using. It's called Noteworthy. From the same sentiment set, just this Love You, which is the perfect sentiment for this. Just going to line it up. We can go ahead and trim the sentiment when we're done, but I'll just line it up here. Careful if you're doing this with your fingers. You can always do it with a scissor as well. Just wanted it nice and straight as possible. So now I have a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 note card. Just make sure that's folded nice and flat. And then what I'm going to do is just add this little panel. And then I think in the middle is good. Add the Love You. So I'll add both of those things. I'll add the panel with some foam tape. And then I'm adding this to a card. It's square. It's 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. And then my center panel is cut to 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add the sentiment strip that we created with a little bit of these black foam dots. And I'm just adding that right to the center of my card. So super easy. We got some shading. We sprayed with water. Everything oxidized a little bit. And then I just added the tiniest spray after putting the stencil back on of this Kitsch Flamingo Distress Spritz. So that is the card. So thanks for swatching with me today. I hope you enjoyed making these cards. Remember that we made the swipey card, the little card with the squares, and of course trying out these new tiny little stencil brushes with these minis. I hope you'll try some of these out for yourself. And thanks so much for stopping by today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more videos. Thanks so much for watching.